All right. Hey, everyone. Just give me a second here. Just want to do a live chat on the storm. Bring you up to date on what's going on. I've been doing a couple tonight, and I want to, I know there's a lot of interest in this, so I want to keep everyone up to date on what's going on. So just give me a second here. I just got to share it to a couple other pages. And we will, if you have any questions, just post them. They scroll so fast. We have so many people who are interested in this storm, as they should be. So just bear with me here for a second. So we actually have that storm, and we have another one right behind it too. So there's two out there that we're keeping an eye on, and it is a storm that everyone in South Florida should be watching closely. Most definitely. And the new track came in recently, so we're going to take a look at that and try to get this set up. Will it hit Mississippi? Well, a little too early for that. That'll be kind of a wait and see sort of thing. Hey, honey, Haru, Boynton Beach, checking in. How you doing? I see some of your questions here, so I guess you guys can see me. All right, let's talk Irma. Hope you had a great holiday weekend, and of course we have some new information that came in at 11 o'clock tonight on Irma. We also have a tropical wave that's obviously, you can see on the shot there, is just to the east of Irma and has an 80% chance of developing in the next 4 to 5 days. But let's concentrate on Irma because that's the one. Hey, hello Jupiter, checking in. When would the worst be expected? Worse than Harvey? Well, this is not Harvey. This is a storm that it just doesn't have the rain. It's not going to stall. Harvey literally did a 360 over Texas, so it's kind of a hurricane that goes through. It dumps 20 inches of rain. It does a U-turn and dumps another 20 inches of rain. So we're not looking at rainfall totals like that. But just about any hurricane you can expect at least some flooding. And typically hurricanes will leave 10 to 15 inches of rain. That's what we saw Francis Jean. Wilma was not as heavy with the rainfall because it was moving so quickly. Remember, that's the one that moved from the West Coast on a Monday morning across South Florida. We roughly saw about 6 to 8 from Wilma. It was going at almost 30 miles an hour as it went through. So there's a look at the storm tonight, 140 mile an hour winds. It does look impressive, and it is a little under 400 miles from the Leeward Islands. They have watches and warnings in effect, obviously, now. The U.S., British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico is watching this one closely, although the track looks like it will stay to the north of Puerto Rico, although they're in the air cone. And so we're looking at a storm that's about a little under 1,700 miles away from South Florida, too. Michelle, how you doing? Dade County. I wish these comments wouldn't spin through so much. I'm sorry. It's really frustrating. Facebook's got to change this. Facebook, please change the way you scroll comments. Because I can't. There's so many people asking questions, and I don't blame you. I will go through after the fact and answer some of the questions too. And if you have any comments, go ahead. Complaints, as always, complaints are welcome. I always get a few of those. Doesn't bother me. I'm just here tracking a storm. I'm not here for compliments. So look at that storm. So the eye's a little bit bigger than it has been the last couple of days. It goes through these eye wall replacement cycles where there's a very small inner core and just physically cannot sustain that small eye, so it eventually breaks down and we get an eye wall replacement where a larger eye, an eye wall, form around it. And it's gone through several of these in the last 3 or 4 days. It's been pretty impressive actually how many. But so it's a larger eye. The hurricane force winds are out, I believe, past 40 miles, and tropical storm force winds are, I believe, approaching about 150 now, 150 miles out from the center. And the forecast, computer models, what happened to the track? Oh, sorry. We want to see the track here. I'm actually surprised that I caught that. But we definitely want to see that track. I moved it around in my show, sorry. All right, here's the 11 p.m. track. So winds at 140, a little less than 400 miles away from the leewards. Pressure 943, impressive. Moving west at 13. Here's the forecast track. Not, for some reason, the labeling on the computer is a little funky. Yes, United States, but Puerto Rico. And then, so that's Wednesday evening, and then Dominican Republic and Haiti, and sort of hoping that the mountains would interact more with this storm, but the track has actually shifted a little to the north, although in the error cone, so we could see some interaction there and some weakening as it moves north of those mountains. They're very tall mountains, and historically have done a pretty good job at tearing apart hurricanes. They just rip away at the inner core, but if the inner core isn't close to the mountains, that's not going to happen. And then as we get into Friday, 8 p.m., 130 mile an hour winds. I want to go back in time here. I'm going to reverse the hurricane. Notice it's 150 by Wednesday, even Tuesday evening, 150. So it actually, the official forecast has it intensifying. And then it moves it into the Turks and Caicos, and then the southern Bahamas, south of Andros. And there is a Saturday 8 p.m. position. So if you look closely at the error cone, almost the entire viewing area is now in that cone with the exception of Indian River County. And a new track will come out at 5 in the morning, and I can pretty much guarantee that Indian River County will be included in that error cone at that point. So not that that's ominous or don't be overly concerned about that, because the track, this is a cone, so the track can certainly go to the south of where that icon is, or to the north, and if it goes north and east, now it's a storm that actually tracks east of us. Some of the models have that. UK Met model has that. UK Met was the superstar for Hurricane Matthew. It was like the one model that was the outlier. And if we look at those models, watch the UK Met. It's on its own. It's seeing, I guess, and the ensemble, GFS ensembles are also trending north now too. So there is everything, and there is Monday and Sunday night. So there's the position. So this is an event, if it has an impact here, that would be Saturday night, Saturday late in the day, Sunday perhaps the peak, and then improving later Monday. That's the timing now. Now that could change, and that's if it has an impact here. So you can see the Euro just hugs the coast, the East Coast. The 18Z GFS is, I don't know what color that is. What is that? Teal? That thing, that color, the line that goes through Lake Okeechobee. That is the GFS model. And that shifted a little west tonight. It was pretty much up I-95 in the turnpike at the earlier run, the 12Z run. Z is Zulu. If I'm talking nonsense, let me know. And we're going to get another, the new Euro will update about 2:33 in the morning. And if you want to stay up, I'll keep you up to date on that. And then the GFS will update in a few hours too. And then they track north after that. And you'll also notice the 4 icon there. I've got a little arrow I was using earlier. So there it is there. So that 4 is the official, that's that 8 p.m. Saturday position from the Hurricane Center. So this Euro, which is right here, is right along the coast, and then we have the GFS right here, which cuts across the lake. Does a landfall down around Key Biscayne, Key Largo, somewhere in that area, and then up. Don't concentrate on these lines. You know, these lines look so ominous. These lines are going to shift. They're going to shift back and forth the next few days. This is all assuming, and actually I think it's the next graphic, it's all assuming that the high weakens, the trough comes in, everything's perfectly aligned for Saturday afternoon. Now, we all know weather forecasting, especially out 4 and 5 days, is, you know, there are errors that start to pop up, and it's definitely timing issues. So A turn sooner brings it more of a threat to the Bahamas. A turn later or a weaker trough will actually bring it more into the Gulf. Actually, I think I can draw that. More into the Gulf and not as much of, so it'll be into this area here. I actually kind of like this arrow. It helps me. So there's our trough there that comes down. You know, some of the models have the trough stronger, some of them have it weaker. Here's our high. So the scenario now is that the high weakens in response to this trough coming down. And our winds, I don't know if I can draw on this. Can I draw arrows? Draw arrows. I didn't know the teal color. I certainly don't know that color. Is that pink? So that's what turns this, that trough. That's all timing. It's all assuming it happens on Saturday, which is possible, but we still have a few days. So my advice is, make sure you have a hurricane plan. Make sure, check your supply list. This is all stuff that should be done June 1st. And just have a plan in place. There are no watches or warnings. I know there's been a lot of discussion about shutters, and I get into it with a bunch of people about shutters. Listen, if you can't put shutters up late in the week, obviously you have to put your shutters up. Hey, I'm one of them. I'm here for the foreseeable future. And today I did not close my shutters, but I made sure every one of them will shut easily, because they get all caked with solid. The accordions on some of the windows, they all cake up, and they all, the wasp nests get in them. So I cleaned all that crap out today, and I made sure that they'll shut. And so I can do that very quickly, hopefully later this week, and maybe even before a watch is issued. But the recommendation is, if there's a watch, that's when you start putting up shutters. But if you have awkward windows, I think this is pretty obvious, but for some reason people wanted to argue with me. I think it's obvious. If you can't put them up later in the week, obviously you should start, thinking about it now. But most of us, I would think 90% of us, can wait and do it later. I think that would be obvious. So that is the case. Now, I would watch these models tomorrow and tomorrow night, and I would, if we see the same runs and the same turn and the same track at the same time, this Saturday turn, even through tomorrow evening's runs, I would, at that point, I'd go, okay, there's a consistency here. We've now had several days where we're seeing this turn and this direction toward Florida. But at this point, I want to see more. I want to see some consistency here. And even though a lot of the models are matching up, we've only seen one day of this, and they will shift again. So, fuchsia, thank you. Get some sleep. Do I look tired? I'm not tired. Good morning. Good morning. 2 minutes. Okay, so I think I pretty much covered it. I've got another update, so if you want to tune into WPTV, I'll be over Jimmy Fallon. And thanks for tuning in. I'll go through your questions. If we see any watches and warnings, probably the middle of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, 48 hours in advance is the watch. And just monitor this. Get your plan together if you don't have one. Just be thinking to yourself, this may be an issue in my life this weekend, and what am I going to do? Will I evacuate? Am I in an evacuation zone? I will be right here. And so I know where I am. My wife has a plan. She's going to a friend's house in a well-built home away from the coast. So just get a plan together. All right. Thank you, everyone. And I have 1 minute. Think I can get ready in time? Thank you for joining, and we'll see you soon. Hey, maybe you want to watch this live update. Let me turn the camera here. Okay. I don't even have a mic. We have 2,000 people watching, everyone. Danielle. All right. I can do this. 30 seconds. The fun of live TV, everyone. Fun of live TV. Oh, I probably shouldn't have my sleeves rolled up, right? 15. Is my mic on now?
Yep. 10.
10 seconds.
5.
Oh, we're close.
2.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sophie, Chief Meteorologist Steve Weigel with an update on Hurricane Irma. Irma is moving toward the Leeward Islands, Category 4 hurricane. It was at 140 miles an hour and a little less than 400 miles from the Leeward, where watches and warnings are now in effect, and a little less than 1,700 miles from South Florida. And this is the storm that everyone in South Florida should be watching closely this week. There's a look at the latest well-structured hurricane. They're symmetrical, not much wind shear going on here. In fact, it could intensify even more. We have warm water, hardly any shear. We have a storm that was obviously a great presentation on the satellite with outflow and all quadrants. There's no dry air anywhere near the center of this. And the official forecast actually does have this storm developing or strengthening into a category 4, which is at 150 miles an hour, and tracking just to the north of Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and then Cuba. And here is the 5-day position of Saturday at 8 o'clock. Almost all of South Florida now in the aerodrome, with the exception of Bureau, Indian River County, right on the St. Lucie County, Indian River County line at that 5-day position. Now, we track to come out at 5 in the morning, and likely that cone will be extended north toward Bureau and maybe Orlando at that point. Here are the computer model tracks tonight. Now, there's the official forecast position. That's Saturday at 8 o'clock. And the models almost all turn toward the north. There's a trough coming down. There's a weakening high-pressure system. That the storm sees that weakness and then starts to push toward the north and begins more to Florida. So Sunday, with the GFS model and also the European model, they have a hurricane and a significant hurricane close or over Florida. So this is one that we have to watch closely. We will see changes in the track as we go through this week, but definitely put your hurricane plan together. The watches and warnings in effect at this point. If those happen, it'll probably be the middle of the week, and everyone should be watching this closely. It's a very strong storm and could intensify even more as it tracks over even warmer water and low wind shear. And it doesn't look like the mountains of Hispaniola will have much of an impact since it's far enough north to miss most of that. We've seen it before. So we'll keep you up to date right here. New track at 5 in the morning. The land of Felicia will have that. And of course, hourly updates as we go through tomorrow too. Just watch it and keep up to date right here. We'll keep you up to date. Danielle?
I can shut all this down.
Yep, sure. All right, everyone. Oh, still have 1,300 viewers. Well, if anyone just tuned in, I think I can answer some of these questions if they don't scroll. Oh, you like that? Oh, thank you. I'm not sure if you like that or not. Yeah, that's how we do the TV. There's the green screen. Bye, Danielle. She's great. And one of the questions, so many people have South Florida, will they evacuate early, like Thursday? Yeah, you know, on these tracks, I mean, if any of these tracks even come close to verifying, we are going to have quite the evacuation issue, because it comes in around Miami and then it moves right up the state. So not only do you have potentially this area evacuating, you have the areas to the south. There's 7 million people in South Florida, so that is a concern. And you're going to have to do it earlier rather than later to avoid that. I have the implements of, there you go. No, you can turn them off. I'll talk in the dark. And so, let me go back to the storm. So there's the Euro model, and that's right along the coastline. We get a new Euro coming in 2:33 in the morning. It hasn't changed much the last couple of days. And then the GFS model, which is at that point Sunday, pretty much right over Lake Okeechobee. These are both hurricanes. These are both significant hurricanes. The red core that you see, those are hurricane force winds. The GFS model, that is a track we don't like to see because we're on the right side of the track here in southeast Florida because of that. But like I said earlier, it's a timing issue. See if I can answer any more of these questions. Everyone's mentioning Desiree. Did Desiree say something that wasn't nice? I'm sorry about not being... Maybe if I hold the cursor, I can... Chances it bypasses us. I mean, yeah, obviously there's still a chance. Whoa, that is bright. There is definitely a chance that it could bypass. There are several scenarios here. One, well, let's talk about it once more. Obviously, there's the scenario like we're seeing tonight with the models where we watch this and it does this track. Like, I can't even look at that. Oh, that's better. Where it does this turn and comes into Florida. Obviously, that's one of the scenarios. So it comes up across the north coast of Cuba and then turns in. If this trough is weaker and the high in turn would be stronger, it'll continue into the Gulf and be less of a threat. If the high weakens and the trough is stronger, then we get a storm that would come more into the Bahamas. There's also the scenario where the track is closer to Hispaniola, Haiti, Dominican Republic, and the core of this gets torn up. That is looking less likely at this point. All the models keep it, I think, far enough north that that shouldn't be too much of an issue. It's still a scenario, but it's looking less likely at this point. When should you evacuate? Brooke wants. No, someone wants to know. When should you evacuate? Well, let me say something about evacuations. We always... First thing you should do is go to WPTV.com and take a look at the Hurricane Survival Guide. And in that guide will be evacuation zones. You don't want to evacuate if you're not in an evacuation zone unless you're in some sort of building that you feel is just not suited to be in a storm. A mobile home would be an example of that. So there's an old saying, run from water, hide from wind. So if you are near the water, get away from the coast. If you're away from the coast, get in a well-structured building. But the evacuation zones for Florida are based on storm surge, and obviously most of those are along the coastline, and most are actually even east of US 1, but some areas like Jupiter and Boca and Port St. Lucie and Stewart, they actually go farther west because there are inlets there, and those inlets let water come in. So check if you're in an evacuation area, and if you are, then we recommend that you try to stay in the county that you live in or a neighboring county and not go to Orlando or Tampa or Atlanta or anywhere like that. Don't try to stay close, because the first thing you're going to want to do if you do actually make it out is get back. And in previous storms, and especially with a storm track potentially like this one, 95 and the Turnpike are going to be parking lots. And I know people in Francis and Jean who evacuated, and they didn't make it an hour north, and they turned around after literally 10 hours of sitting on the Turnpike and went through the storm at home. Is it likely to hit Atlanta? No. Not likely. I mean, Atlanta might get some rain, but... Tony, how you doing? Thanks for joining in. Should we evacuate? A lot of evacuation questions. You know, those, you really, I mean, it's always good to think of that scenario and have a plan in place. Like if you are in an evacuation area now, you can tell by looking at the survival guide, and if you are, be thinking, where am I going to go? Call your friends. Say, hey, listen, can I stay with you? I don't recommend riding in a storm alone either, because it's just, especially a strong storm, it's, you know, you want to know what's going on. You want to, you know, go through it with other people. So try to find friends or family in your county or a neighboring county and ride out the storm with them, and do it in a well-built house or structure. Don't go somewhere where the construction isn't as good as where you're leaving, because that wouldn't make sense either. I saw a question about the Bahamas, Delray. Well, I think everyone is, you know, Bahamas, Delray. At this point, there's too much uncertainty, and as I said, these models will change, even though it looks you know, disconcerting looking at that, especially with this turn. These will change. They're going to change tomorrow morning. They're going to change tomorrow night. There's a well-known, someone I believe just posted the zones. Thank you. It's on, for Palm Beach County, it's on the county website, and someone just posted the link. So just click that link and see if you're in an I believe on that you can type in your address and you will see if you're in an evacuation zone. Thank you, whoever did that. That's great. Appreciate that. Got some help right here. Fantastic. So, some of these questions are really good. Tampa, how you doing, Tampa? Oh, airports. People have been asking. I'll do this, Ty. People have been asking about airports. Usually, airports shut down or start changing flights when the winds get around 40, 45. You know, when we start feeling tropical storm force winds. They're asking a lot of questions about schools. Are they going to be open or closed later this week? It's way, way too early to know that. We just got in the cone. This is a weekend thing. I would hope, though, that if we get hurricane watches, that schools would consider that, because a lot of people, it's going to lock a lot of people in place if they keep schools open, and you need to give people the flexibility to get ready. Stop flights. Well, I just talked about, you know, airports. Previously, it's been around 40, 45 miles an hour where planes just aren't going to fly. You know, tropical storm force winds. And with the latest scenarios, we could see tropical storm force winds develop on Saturday. I hesitate giving times because it's going to change. And but I would say later Saturday, and then, you know, hurricane conditions potentially Saturday night, Sunday. I think any peak weather at this point would appear to be Sunday, and then starting to improve later Monday. But again, it's a long way off at this point. Long, long way off. In fact, there's a Saturday 8 o'clock position. So it'll be interesting. I think the key day is tomorrow, or later today, because we have this turn, and we have to see if the models continue to make that turn, and if the Hurricane Center jumps on that turn. I mean, they've subtly committed to it, but not quite. I'd like to see that commitment first. Cat 5 possibly? Yeah. I mean, it's possible, sure. The official forecast has it intensifying to 150. It's close to Category 5. And intensity forecasts are shaky sometimes. You know, I would say, you see that 4 on Saturday evening? I would say, think to yourself, the most likely scenario is a Category 4 Sunday or Saturday evening. But it could be a 3 or it could be a 5. I mean, I give some leeway there. Because of the problems with forecasting the intensity of hurricanes. It's very difficult. So yeah, so Christine hopefully answered that question. I think I just kind of have to, don't leave pets behind. I don't think anyone leaves pets behind. I think everyone's really, really good about their pets. And we have pet shelters here now. Yeah, that's what I found. That's one of the things that's really changed, I think, in the last 10 years. People are, they realize, what are they going to do with their dogs and their cats, and we have pet shelters, so that helps too. Tom, I saw your question, Tom, and then it disappeared. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Crystal. Tom, every time it pins on a question, this scroll flips. I'm sorry about this, folks. I've got to figure out a better system. I don't know if there is a better system than what's happening here. Is I'm doing a Facebook Live, and just all these comments and questions are just scrolling through, and I can barely read any of them. A lot of them are pretty long questions too. We'll try to answer some. Thank you for that. Who was that? Jenny. Thank you for posting the zones. Oh, someone posted Martin County's site. So you can go on there and you can check if you're in an evacuation zone. And if you are, you should be thinking to yourself, okay, later this week if I'm dealing with a major hurricane, where am I going to evacuate? And as I said earlier, try to find a place in your county away from the coastline or a neighboring county. Try not to do this planning to go to another state, because you pretty much have to leave in the next day or two to successfully do that. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting on the Turnpike or I-95 or 75, Alligator Alley. It'll be gridlocked. So it's something that you have to decide very soon, especially with a storm like this, where there's so much concern. Also, and I mentioned it near the top, I know we have a lot of new people watching. This is not Harvey flooding. This is, Harvey literally stalled over almost a week over Texas, so we're not looking at 30, 40, 50 inches of rain. This is a pretty quick-moving storm, and typically hurricanes like this will leave 10 to 15 inches of rain. That's what we saw with Francis and Jean, and Wilma was even less because it was moving a little faster. I think most areas in Wilma saw less than 10. So there's no expectation that the storm is going to stall. So that worry, don't worry about that. Now the winds are a concern. Effects on the Bahamas pretty much the same as South Florida at this point. It's the future track that we have to watch. This is really one that you just have to monitor through the week, and I expect by this time tomorrow we'll have a pretty good, what is this, 50-foot waves. I don't know where stuff comes from. There's so much misinformation out there. Oh, that comment disappeared. Something about 50-foot waves. You know, the problem is people believe, why never higher than Cat 5? Why don't we have hurricanes higher than Cat 5? I mean, I guess I suppose Hurricane Center's thought about it. They've had some significant storms with 170, 180 mile an hour winds. What's the point, though? Like Mitch, Andrew, Wilma, they're all like 170. That could have been Category 6, but in the end, what's the point? I don't see what the payoff is. Jim Cantore is in Port St. Lucie. I don't think he'd be staying there because he usually heads to the coast. Lake Okeechobee, yeah, and the lake could be a concern. Should the storm make that track like the GFS? There it is tonight. It's an impressive hurricane, isn't it? Well, TV brought... This is just awful, the way this is set up. Facebook, if you're listening, change the way you do this. How fast will it get weaker? I'm sorry about this, folks. I gotta figure out something. There's so many questions, and I want to answer as many as I can, and this is just scrolling through. My brother lives along the coast in Martin County. You're probably asking whether he should evacuate, and well, wait till evacuation. Or, there's evacuations. That may never happen, but if it does, wait till then. What is the worst of the storm? Well, typically the right side of the track is where we see the worst weather. That's the greatest threat for tornadoes, highest storm surge. So the right side of the track on this storm right now is... That's not a very good color. What is that? Someone told me that's fuchsia. Is that fuchsia? That's white. This is the right side of the track, right here. So, for any kind of landfalling hurricane, this is where, the greatest threat for tornadoes. You need two things for tornadoes. You need rising warm air, thunderstorms, and you need wind shear. And your greatest wind shear is in this area right here. And high storm surge, you just have the winds pushing water up against the coast in this direction. The water actually is being pulled away in this direction. Let's say if this is the coast here, which it will be in these islands. Flooding, well, I mean, you can get heavy rain anywhere in the storm, but in some storms, especially storms that are a little farther north, the heaviest rain usually wraps around to the northern and the northwestern side of it. And the strongest winds. A lot of people don't realize this, and they don't talk about it much, because when the Hurricane Center gives the wind speed, in this case 140 miles an hour, it is taking into effect that the storm is moving 13 miles an hour. But what's really happening here is that 13 miles an hour, all these winds on this side are 13 miles an hour stronger, and they're on this side 13 miles an hour weaker. So what the Hurricane Center does is they get the strongest wind. What's going on here is the forward motion of the hurricane is part of the wind speed, the maximum wind speed, because you have to add that. You have 100, say you have 100 mile an hour winds and your storm's moving 10 miles an hour. Those winds are 110 miles an hour. But the Hurricane Center does that for you. You don't have to have a calculator at home and figure that out. They're doing that for you. So in this storm, the winds right now are 140 miles an hour. Hurricane Center has done that calculation for you. So it's not 140 plus 13. Wilma was the worst on the backside of the hurricane. Yeah, I mean, each storm is different. Wilma also had a cold front behind it that increased the pressure gradient, and it was moving almost 30 miles an hour. Just every hurricane's different. I mean, everyone's taking it seriously, which is nice to see. Flooding in Wellington. I mean, there's the storm moves over South Florida, flooding is a threat. Freshwater flooding is one of the threats in a hurricane. So, yes, there is that risk. When will we know about shelters? Well, shelters you'll hear about when evacuations start. If you want to know what shelters might open, go to WPTV.com and check out the Hurricane Survival Guide. There's a list of the shelters. There's a list of the buildings that are designated as shelters that could open up. So you could take a look at that list and see which ones are closest to you. But then when the evacuations happen, not all shelters open at the same time. So you have to check that that shelter is actually open too. Shelters are really a last resort. It's when you don't have a safe place to stay. It's uncomfortable environment. You're packed in. It's a safe building, but it's not the most comfortable situation. So if you're in a good spot, you probably don't want to go to a shelter. Leave it for people who definitely need that shelter instead. Yes, I saw a question about the storm or the wave in behind Irma. That wave, at this point, looks like it stays out in the ocean, but it does seem to stall way out there. So, we'll keep an eye on it, but in the Atlantic at this point, even late in the week, it's in the Atlantic. Will it hit Virginia? Well, there's still some uncertainty whether it'll hit Florida, so Virginia's a long way off. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No. But it is possible. Steve rocks. Thank you. That disappeared quick. All right, I'll go through these questions after. I love that everyone has so much interest in this storm. Just be interested. There's no need to, overreact, I guess. It's still a long way out. I have been through this, as most of you have, many times, and maybe I noticed this more than you, but there have been many times we get in the fifth day of a cone, and in the end it doesn't materialize, or it's a glancing blow. So I'm not saying ignore it. I'm definitely not saying ignore it. But keep in mind, things change, and this is early in the ball game. This is, for South Florida, we just got in this cone tonight, and there's a long way to go. And any impact is on the weekend, so monitor it. Have a plan. First part of a plan. Check to see if you're in an evacuation area now, and if you are, then decide where you're going to go. Call up Billy or Buddy or Jenny and say, hey, you live in a nice house, can I ride out the storm with you if I have to evacuate? That's what I would do. That's what my wife does. And it's always good, like I said, to stay with other people if you're going through a storm. When will they do evacuations? When warnings and watches are issued. That would be late in the week. That's not guaranteed. Orlando? Well, the GFS track verifies Orlando could certainly see some strong winds too. But this is still... What are we? We're now Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're still like 5 days. A lot can change in 5 days. Just watch it. just keep an eye on it. I'll keep you up to date. I'll keep doing these Facebook Lives. I should get home though. Anyway, and I'll try to go through some of the questions. I'm going to try to figure out. I don't know if you can. It's going to look freaky probably, but I want you to see what I see, which is madness. Because and this is where I'm supposed to read these 1,000 questions, and it just scrolls by so quick. I have to find a solution to this. But I can. Steve says storm shutters up 48 hours before. Yes, when watches are issued, that's when you want to put up hurricane shutters. And some people jumped on me earlier saying that that wasn't possible for them. Well, if it's not possible for you, then you have to put them up before that. It's pretty obvious. But if you're around and you're around all week, there's no need to put them up yet, because you could be taking them down because the storm doesn't come. So, but, and also if there are second floors to homes where you have difficult shutters, not a bad idea to, if we are on the same pattern tomorrow, Wednesday, to even, and if there's not a watch, maybe go, maybe I should throw a couple on that second floor because it's a pain and it takes a little more time. But to shutter up a house and live in it all week when you could put the shutters on Thursday or Friday, doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make sense. Because it may not come. I live in a mobile home. Then you should be thinking, where am I going to go if the storm threatens? You want a safer building than a mobile home. Definitely. Scared. Someone said they were scared. Don't be scared. Just keep up to date with it. We should find that comment. Yeah, don't be scared about this storm. Just keep up to date. Monitor it. We'll keep you up to date here, and we'll track it with you. Let you know the latest and let you know what to do and when. All right, I better wrap it up. I could ramble on all night. Thank you, everyone. This was actually pretty good. And I will figure this scrolling thing out. There must be 1,000 comments here. I don't know if I've ever seen so much interest in a hurricane. And I know most of you out there would go, no. But there's still a lot of time. I think there are 2 or 3 things going on here. I think there's a Harvey effect. Harvey's rains, we're not going to see anything like that. And I think the second effect is that the official forecast has a Category 4 just south of Florida. And this storm, as you can see on the satellite loop, that looks impressive. But it's still out there. Still got a ways to go. There's another look at it. One more look at the track and I'll wrap it up. So there it is. Wednesday, Thursday into Turks and Caicos, down to 140 again. And there's the final position. The error cone is now into St. Lucie County, all the way back to the west coast. And at 5 a.m. I suspect it'll be all the way up in toward Orlando and Tampa. And it's Category 4 at that point. And the models, one more look at the models. They bring it north of the islands and then they do that turn. But that's a significant timing issue with that trough coming down, the high weakening, and it all happening on a Saturday afternoon. Saturday evening. So, you know, a little change, like a 12-hour change, if the hurricane speeds up or slows down, the trough doesn't materialize, that whole thing shifts east or west. So, this isn't a done deal. Not a done deal. It's not even close. So, keep that in mind, but plan. I'm not telling you to ignore it. Just plan and go through your hurricane plan and watch and keep up to date with it. All right, thanks everyone. Keep in touch and watch it together. We got a new European run coming in at about 3 in the morning, and we'll all go through this together. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone, and we will talk to you later today. See you later.